Welcome to A Moment with Modern Mentors. So hi Pippa, I'm really excited to be catching up with you today. We're quite a way through COVID now, but still working from home. But Zoom chats seem kind of normal, don't they?
Yep.
And even though we do see each other around and about, it's not often that we get to have a good chat about work these days. We're probably talking about kids and things. So I'm excited to be talking to you about these subjects because I've seen and we've had a lot of exposure to each other over the years from business and career side of things. But, it's probably been a while since we've caught up on what's going on in your world. And you've got a great new job at Swift Media, which I can't wait to hear all about. So I thought I'd just jump into maybe you telling us a little bit about, how you got to this point, a bit about your career and how you landed this sweet CEO gig at Swift Media.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. I think what's interesting, if I think back about my 25, 30-year career, which is, telling on my age, if I had to characterize what I do best is commercial innovation. I really like innovating. I really like product development. Product is my background, but I only like developing and innovating products if they're going to be commercial. So that was always my bent. When we worked together at 9 and that was very much what we were doing. That's very much what I did at Fairfax. That's what we did at Apex, what I've done at 9. What's been interesting about that is all through my career, I have had a lot of success creating these really great products that were really innovative and really ahead of their time. But so often what would happen was they would get commoditized and then disrupted by these big global platforms coming in with, hundreds of thousands of engineers working on their product development, and they just roll over the top of you.
What's an example of that?
Oh, an example of that would be, remember when we were back doing, when we first did XML in shopping for Microsoft.
Yeah.
We're like, God, how cool is this? People can stock their own shelves, blah, 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 blah. And we were really ahead of our time in terms of online shopping. And then they just got rolled over by eBay and Amazon and all the rest. And I think even when we were developing, I think we, used to develop really cool, innovative ad products at Fairfax. And then they would just get rolled over by Google, Facebook,
Tinder, RSVP.
Yeah, they weren't so good on ad products, but so it was really, really hard to compete with those guys because they just are so big and they just swamp the market with low-priced inventory and just change everything that you're doing. So when I heard about Swift, what I heard was a company that had good tech, quite innovative tech, but they also operated in areas that had very high barriers to entry. So immediately my ears pricked up on the high barriers to entry. They were operating in a number of niches, like their biggest niche is mining and resources. And, back in the day, 30 years ago, coming from Western Australia, you do understand that mining and resources is a very deep and very profitable niche. So, my ears pricked up. The other one that they operated in was aged care. So both mining and resources and aged care, they're deep niches, they've got high barriers to entry, and they've also got strong tailwinds behind both of them. So that's what I was interested in there. Also, what was attractive about Swift was its recurring revenue. And after you've spent 25 years working in media where every day you start from zero, recurring revenue, you see why they get such big multiples. You sign those deals, they're on 3 to 5 year contracts. Once you sign those deals, you move on to the next contract.
Yeah.
You leave an account manager in place, but it's not the same. As long as you're servicing them well and you're staying ahead of, what your clients' needs are, it's just revenue that builds, and it's really sweet and it's got a high multiple. So
tell us a little bit about what Swift Media is, just for the listeners that need to start kind of understanding.
Swift supplies entertainment and communication platforms in closed loop environments. So, that is our sweet spot.
And then how are you in the mining? How is that applied to the mining industry?
Those closed loop environments are within the remote mining camps. Remote mining camps are so far away, you cannot pipe enough bandwidth into them. So when the miners come off their shift, every single one of them has their own donger that they live in, and there's a massive television set in that donga.
And you load up all the content.
Swift builds the cables, it cables out, it constructs, it designs, it does all of the network engineering out to the mine, and then it creates the entertainment and communication platform. The communication part is really important. I'll come to that. And then we have teams that live in the Pilbara and they support the mines.
Yeah.
So what happens with the mines is, you know, you may have between 5,000 and 10,000 men living on that mine, the fly in, fly out workers. When they come off shift at 5 o'clock, they all go and have a shower, and then they all go and turn on the television set.
Yeah.
They go to the wet mess and they want to watch some sport, and then when they come back, they want to watch a movie. So to be able to lay cables big enough for them to bring their own device or bring their own service would cost millions. What Swift does is it lays one cable out, and overnight it drip feeds in a whole lot of content, and then it creates a local area network. So when those miners come off the mine, well, you could have 15,000 of them simultaneously streaming Avatar, and no one would know the difference.
Yeah.
So it creates a big pipe experience of very little pipes.
And where else are you? That's a very kind of niche case study.
Yep.
Where else are you applying that kind of infrastructure?
So what happened with Swift is, you know, they were huge, and around 2015 to 2016, then the mining boom, the construction phase of the mining boom came off, and they thought, oh, we'd better diversify. This is actually what we do is applicable in all closed loop environments. So they simultaneously diversified into 11 new verticals, and those new verticals were aged care, hospitality, so motels, hotels, hospitals, oil rigs, marine vessels, Ministry of Defence. I mean, just a ton of different all at once.
Where lots of people are in one spot or needing a service.
And because it's a closed loop, our guys can negotiate really aggressive output deals with the Hollywood studios because it's a closed loop. They see you just like an aeroplane. So we're on exactly the same release window as the aeroplanes. So our miners are seeing Marvel movies pretty much at the same time as they're hitting the cinemas. They're also importantly seeing the kids' movies at the same time as they're...
Because they've got their families there.
No, they don't have their families there. They're FaceTiming with their kids and they're talking about the movies.
And they're watching and they're... Right, got you. Oh, okay, right.
Yep. So...
I mean, you've got a long history in entertainment. So are you involved in those negotiations with the studios as well, or do you have a team of people that do that?
That was all well before my time. We have a content manager, and he negotiates the deals with the BBC, with the Village Roadshow, you know, with a bunch of different output deals. But what was interesting about what Swift did when it diversified, because they had really good tech, but they didn't really understand what you and I would know as product. So they didn't ever have a focus on the end user's needs. So they basically took the mining product and they shoved it into aged care, hospitality, hospitals, all this sort of stuff.
All the same look and feel.
All the same. Yeah, very, very. And so one of the first things I did when I got to Swift was like, okay, where's the product team? There is none. Okay, let's have a look at the products. Saw that the products needed to be rebuilt. And aged care was the one, you know, we did a quick analysis on which of these verticals can be both profitable and scalable. And we identified 3. One of those was aged care. What we realized with aged care was that the Swift on-demand product, that's what it's called, was not suitable for aged care for 3 reasons. Number one, we put it in with a set-top box, and a set-top box requires a high degree of network sophistication, which is fine in a mine because we put it in. It's not fine in an aged care facility. Everyone doesn't understand aged care facilities. They are there for the last 2 years of your life. The average age of someone in an aged care facility is between 85 and 95.
Yeah, they're not.
These people did not have computers as business machines. They don't understand file structure. I don't know if you've ever tried to explain your tablet, how a tablet works to your grandparents. It's really difficult. So number one, the set-top box was wrong. It goes into their rooms. 50% of them have got dementia, cognitive impairment. They just knock that box off and it takes their free-to-air television out. Yeah. That's terrible. Yeah. They absolutely rely on free-to-air television. Also, they were going down all the time because the facilities didn't have in-room Wi-Fi. So that was no good. The second thing was the UI. The UI was built for men 20 to 40 on Nines. I mean, we just know what it's like to flick through Netflix, Stan, any of that stuff. It's not like that for 85 to 95-year-olds. They understand channel up, channel down. That's it.
That's what they need.
That's what they need. And then finally, the content was wrong. They don't need to see Marvel movies. You know?
So did you have those deals in place with the aged care, or you were prohibited from doing it with the old UI and the old experience, and now you actually presented a custom product, and that's where you piqued the interest?
No, we were in 12,000 rooms, so they'd already sold in quite a lot, but a lot of the clients were really, really unhappy. So one of the clients rang me up and said, "Oh, we know that we've signed a 3-year agreement with you, but this is just not
working."
Now, I knew that we were going to develop another product called Swift Plus, which is an RF product, which means we, instead of putting it into a set-top box, we just put one server in the comms room, and then we tune every individual television set. We just put an extra 10 channels in, and those channels are communication channels, so that the facility can communicate what's for lunch, what's for dinner. It's the most asked question.
I see.
The second
so you can start customizing the experience for the facility. Yeah, perfect.
Completely. And it's like a hotel compendium. Welcome to Adventist Care, Mia. You know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then more importantly, we did a lot of engagement content. So your problem is social isolation in aged care. It's the same as mining. It's social isolation. Most of these people are now, you know, they're in the very last 2 years of their life. They're not that mobile. They're not really going out of their rooms a lot. And a lot of them have dementia. So we put in dementia-specific content. It's called sundowning content. People with dementia are like little kids. They wake up in the morning and they're actually in a pretty good mood. They've lost their short-term memory, not their long-term memory. But as the day goes on, they get rattier and rattier and rattier. Just after lunch, they're really angry. So they just want to go home, and they don't understand why they're not at home. So we put this content in that is incredibly low stimulation. It's like a 15-minute walk through a lavender field, or a waterfall, or a koi pond. They're on rotation, and what it does, it allows the nursing staff. The nursing staff on average have 8 minutes per resident per day. That's it.
And the rest of the time they're on their own.
The rest of the time they're on their own. So it allows them to put them in front of this content, and it completely calms them down.
Brilliant.
And then they can get ready for the next.
And was that something that you thought up? How did you get there? What was the process in which you?
One of the, you know, we have various subject matter experts working within the business, and we had one subject matter expert, and they bought his business called Web to TV, which was basically a really cut down version of what I just described. Ours has got 10 channels, his had 2. But he alerted us to the fact that this sundowning issue was huge. So our content guys went to Dementia Australia, and they kind of went through a program with Dementia Australia, and they sourced all of this content. Brilliant. And then we do sit dance. So, you know, falling over is what kills old people because they're no longer mobile. So they do all of these
exercises. And
on the weekends, they can't get the OTs and the PTs in. So the old people are left by themselves for the whole weekend, so they can schedule this during the weekends. And then we still do, you know, a feature film, but instead of doing 50 feature films, we do 1 feature film a day, and it's on a permanent loop. And between each showing, there's a countdown.
So they know
on next. And then we allow the facility to print out today's movie, and they put it everywhere. And then when they go in, those who still go in for lunch and dinner, they all have a conversation about the movie.
That's right, the water cooler moment.
Exactly.
Which is super important in those kind of places where there's probably not a lot of connections otherwise.
There's nothing
about medication and old age, but now they've got a movie and their content they can relate to on that level. And how can you customize further? Can you get kind of Zoom calls piped into the same UI, or is it something that you could take further?
Yeah, so exactly. So when COVID hit, we were just about to release that product. So then our guys pivoted. They had another little product called My Family. And the way My Family works is it belongs on a much more sophisticated on-demand product. But what they did is they did a pivot so that even if you've got Swift Plus, you can get an app. The family can download an app, and you basically pair your app to your loved one's television set, And so as you take all those pictures of the grandkids, you just cast them straight up and they become their screensaver.
Amazing.
So they don't have to do anything. They just sit there and see all the photos rolling.
Yeah, that
Really
could keep them busy for weeks.
It's really good for dementia too, because when they see the photos of the people they know, it keeps
familiarity.
Yeah.
I mean, is this the first time in your career you've really felt like you're giving back to the community, or is this, this sounds very, very kind of good work that you're doing here? Where I'm used to entertainment and media, Pip, and this is
no, it is really good knowing that you can do that and make a difference. I mean, obviously, again, it's commercial. Like, the idea here is that we can saturate as many aged care facilities. What's interesting about the product that we've built is it's got 10 times the functionality of, say, Foxtel, but it's a fifth of the price.
Yeah.
So the idea is that not only the high-end facilities can get this, but they can actually get it the whole way through, because they work on really skinny margins.
And does it,
a volume deal.
Right. And is because obviously you're kind of competing against the Netflixes and the Stans in some way, shape or form, but is there anything with your content licenses that prohibit you going out to mainstream consumers? So could you badge it up and could launch
no, we can't
switch?
do that. It's got to be in the closed loop environment. So right now in residential aged care, there are 200,000 rooms operating today in Australia.
And you've got 11,000 of them, did you say?
We have 12,000 of them.
Yep.
Less than 15% of those rooms are serviced by anything other than free-to-air television.
Right. So there's a huge opportunity there alone. Huge opportunity,
because the opportunity is for the facilities to communicate.
Yeah.
To be able to communicate and get stuff across.
What about schools? Is there an opportunity with schools and education?
Haven't really looked at that yet. So for us, we've got those 200,000 residential aged care rooms, but the adjacencies that lie next to that is in-home care, which is growing. And then finally retirement villages. So retirement villages,
which is now for 50 pluses, by the way. You drive up the East Coast and you see them recommending 50 pluses to go to retirement villages these days. So that's a huge market.
Yeah, it's a huge market. Now, those people do understand interactivity. So you can do a much more sophisticated service for them, but still what you offer that no one else offers is the communication ability, the ability
and that integration.
Yeah.
So for any place that has a communication broadcast that needs to come across the channel, they can do it in one. And hospitals is a great example too, right?
Yeah. The issue with hospitals is as soon as you get between a patient and their medication or the nursing staff, your insurance policies are ridiculous. So that's a niche that we're like,
yeah.
I think what's interesting about that, the opportunity that we found with the 85 to 95-year-old demographic, we suspect that no one has got it right. We suspect that it's the same situation throughout the developed world.
Yeah. So it could be a global offering?
Yeah, that aged care, that as residents in aged care just don't get interactivity.
They don't get much, probably, do they? They're probably like a lost demographic in a lot of ways.
They're called the silent generation because the boomers come up behind them. And, these ones were just, they were born during the war.
Yeah, technology just wasn't around for them. Yeah.
They were 55 when computers became business machines. So
they were on their way out.
Are leaving the workforce.
Yeah. I love the sound of this business, and because it seems to bring together everything that you've done over your career and into one role, and then obviously that perfect cherry on top of the give back too. Is it? Are you enjoying it? What are you feeling towards it?
It's very, very. It's been very, very challenging. Obviously, COVID.
I was just about to say
has been a challenge. So when I walked into the business, it was all over the place. They were in 12 verticals.
Yeah.
So I had to immediately do a piece of analysis that brought them back to 3 verticals. They'd recently bought they'd grown through acquisition. So, they'd bought 3 or 4 companies in quick succession, but they hadn't really done the work to integrate the companies, either the IP, the people, the systems, or the processes. So I really walked into 5 separate little companies. So I had to do a lot of streamlining work, and also there were cash flow issues that had been dare I say, kind of hidden by some crazy accounting. So as soon as I got in, I virtually was like, oh, here's my plan. This is what we're going to do. Isn't this great? Blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, oh, we're going to run out of money. You got to go get some cash. So suddenly I was on the capital raising trail, and, you know, singing for my supper every single day.
That's I mean, you're very well versed in doing that, though. I mean, that's your experience through Nine MSN, through Fairfax, through Nine. They found the perfect person for you. How did they find you? I mean, how did you come together with Swift?
Oh, it's a funny story. So I'd resigned from Nine. I was like, okay, I'm done. I did what I needed to do, which was build them addressable advertising and kind of get them into the #1 BVOD space. I'm like, my time here is done. And then I was thinking, okay, well, I'll do a couple of board seats. And I had a coffee with Tony Four. And Tony's like, oh, yeah, I'll introduce you to my network. Every now and then I'll just ask you to go and have coffee with someone, blah, 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 blah. And 2 weeks later, he rang up and he said, do you know Darren Smorgan? I said, well, I don't know Darren, but obviously I know the Smorgan name. Everyone knows the Smorgan name. And he said, oh, Darren's looking for a board member, a CEO and a chairperson. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. He started telling me about Swift, and that's when I was just like, high barriers to entry, recurring revenue, this sounds like fun, and obviously a great tech team. And then, he said, oh, I'm looking for a CEO and, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, kind of a bit lukewarm about whether I'd do it or not, because it sounded like, a ton of work. But I really liked Darren. He just sat on the board. And then we had coffee a couple of days later, and he said, look, would it change your mind if I was the chairman? And I was like, yeah, okay, I could really work with you. He's very direct. I mean, I'm direct. Darren's more direct than me. You absolutely know where you stand with Darren every single minute of the day. But I really like working with people like that. Yeah. And I thought, Darren knows so much about equity capital markets. He came from Champ. He was a private equity guy. He really knows that whole area. And I didn't know it at all. So it was a ridiculous learning curve for me.
Exactly, because it kind of blows my mind that you had a learning curve, because I feel like you're probably one of the most experienced people I know in the corporate media world. What was he able to teach you?
Well, I mean, my learnings and my experience in the corporate media world was always as a senior executive in a huge public company. So I didn't have that much exposure to all the financial modeling and all the financial instruments and everything that lies below EBITDA. And there's a lot of it. I was just totally focused on EBITDA. Yeah. But suddenly when you're in a small company, it's ASX listed. Yeah, EBITDA is important, but cash is king. And suddenly I had to understand cash flow, and then go out and start raising money. And I was talking to a completely new audience. I mean, I'd never really had anything to do with equity capital markets. So
what kind of people are you raising money from with a business like Swift? I mean, is it
institutional people that run big institutions, retail investors, small investors? I mean, you literally do roadshows in which you do back-to-back presentations, one every hour for 9 hours of the day, and you just run around just doing presentations and answering questions.
So how did you get that process started? So obviously you come into the business, you've got your plan, you realize you're kind of up against a cash flow issue. What's your next steps there? Are you putting a kick-ass deck together and bringing in some good people? Like how did you get in front of the next step to present and get money, and what kind of money are we talking?
Yeah, you've got to have a really good strategy. You've got to have a story that people are going to get excited about. So you put that together. I mean, look, the first step as an ASX listed company is you need a really good IR advisor, investor relations advisor. We got a really good guy, and he's like, okay, he had all the contacts and he just set up meetings. And obviously having Darren Smorgan with you helps, because everyone knows the Smorgan name. So in Melbourne, like every third person we met was a cousin of Darren's. And then you spend all of your time in the big end of town in these massive boardrooms. And 20 odd people will come in. They're all high net wealth and high net worth investors, and they just want to come in and hear the story. And then they make a decision about whether they're going to give you $50, $100, $250, $500,000.
And so you bring on a series of multiple investors, and they all contribute, and they're all shareholders in the business moving
They
forward?
are now. So they get a placement and they get shares in the business. So every time you do it, you dilute the shares, but it brings cash straight into the business.
And how does that process work with getting your current board and investors on board with those new investors? Is that a difficult process?
Well, the current board need to understand. They understand pretty well your cash flow, and they understand the need to strengthen the balance sheet. So no one's going to arc up on that.
Yeah.
And same thing with the investors. I mean, if they want to protect their investment and they want to grow it, you need cash coming into the company all the time.
Yeah. So that seems like they'd already done that because they were ASX listed, and then obviously the cash flow becomes, comes into question, and then you go around for, was it the second round of capital raising? When
small ASX listed companies are constantly capital
raising. Right? Yeah.
The market. She's got to have a good story, so the market will, throw money in.
Keep throwing money in.
Keep throwing money in.
And how are you going now? So you've raised your capital. So you come in, you've done that piece of work. How long did that take? Was that 3-month process?
We did a capital raise in September, and then we're kind of just about to bring Swift Plus to market, and then COVID hit. And COVID had a really big effect on the health and wellbeing business that they bought. They bought a business just before I joined, which is the old medical media business, and that had been bleeding about $800,000 a month cash burn.
Wow.
So
that hurts.
You got to fill in really quickly. We'd gotten that down to around 400, but what we realised, we were actually just about to divest that business, and we're very, very close to signing a deal. But during the due diligence project, we'd come to realise that our sales model was way too top heavy, and so when COVID hit, we pulled out of the deal. And then we streamlined the business. We made 65 people redundant in a day.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
How many people did you have initially?
About 130. About half.
Wow, so half the workforce.
Gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, really tough.
That's a tough job to do.
That's a tough thing to do over Zoom.
Oh, even
Tell
worse.
people who don't have their jobs anymore.
Yeah.
That was really hard. And while we, then just went through the whole business with a fine-tooth comb, just looked where we could pull costs out, got it down to its very basis, and then tried to get to a situation where our recurring revenue was less than was more than our ongoing costs. But at that time, we also won 3 huge mining jobs, and that in order to deliver those, we had to then go and rehire 15 people.
You just can't tell with timing, though. You just don't know what's ahead, right?
And that's the thing about a small business. If you're not comfortable with change, don't go in small business. Because literally day to day, it's completely different.
Yeah.
And then we did another cap raise. We raised another 3.3. And, obviously everyone's hoping that COVID would just be shorter rather than longer term, because COVID really hurt our health and wellbeing business, because that business sells advertising in screens in GP surgeries. And it sells mostly to small businesses surrounding those screens. They all shut down. So we're seeing it again in Melbourne. So that's going to extend kind of some COVID pain for us. Mining and resources, not massively hit, other than sourcing hardware from China became hard as we did big installs.
Right.
And then, but aged care, completely blown out of the water. Residential aged care, because of Newmarch House, they just shut down. There's no one's going in, no one's doing installs. They're not even interested in talking to you. All they're interested in is keeping their people alive.
Safety, yeah. So many challenges for you, and how are you navigating through that as a CEO and a leader?
So, you just got to always have a pretty good plan in place. I've done the fortunate work of putting a really good team around me. So, I've got Kirsty Davison, ex-Fairfax. She's our chief customer officer. She knows a lot about product development. She knows a lot about marketing. She knows a lot about communications, and she knows a lot about strategy. So she's our chief customer and strategy officer. So she's like behind me all the time, building up what our strategies need to be. Then I got a girl called Natalie Grabby, who I'd worked with at NINE, and she was the head of sales for NINE Digital in Melbourne. And Natalie was one of those very few salespeople that you meet that is a combination of being very relationship driven and very process and analytical. So I love Natalie because her forecasts never change. She doesn't give you a forecast until it's
rock solid,
bulletproof. That's rock solid. There's no surprises with Natalie, which from a CEO perspective makes it much easier to deal with, because I can then work with the CFO and plan.
And it's a trusting,
yeah,
you trust your numbers. Yeah.
I completely trust Natalie's numbers.
Would they be your four people, your CFO, your product and people person, communications and user, and then Natalie from a sales perspective? Is that you?
Yeah, no, then I have the GM of operations. So it's a guy called Aidan Somerville. He's fantastic. So Aidan actually has the most people reporting to him in the business. These are the guys who go and deliver our products onto those mines and support them. There's a lot of them. Yeah. Okay. It's a heavy part of the business. And he also, they get a lot of variations. So we're on those mines and one of the guys will go, oh, fuck, the Wi-Fi doesn't work so well. And Aidan's got one of his guys then, they're like, oh, we can re-quote on that. And before you know, there's another $500,000. So that's a really key. And then my final person, just because health and wellbeing was always a kind of a different business. I've left that as a different business, and I have a GM of that, a guy called Joe Stubbs, and he knows everything about that business, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And so what, one of the kind of interesting questions I wanted to kind of explore with you is that, from a personal perspective, you've provided me with a lot of mentorship, and you have done that for a lot of people over the course of your career. What do you think it is that, really enables you to help other people come through the ranks? Because, I think even with Kirsty and all these people you're talking about, you've developed their career to a certain extent to get them to the level that they're at, and that's why you've brought them on board. What do you think it is about you and your particular style that has really helped mentor?
I think because I didn't have like a set career plan. I think because my career was really serendipitous. I didn't get a job till I was 31. That was my first job when I met you.
Yeah. And you got to tell the audience what you were doing before.
Well, I mean, I was a journalist before, and I was also doing a PhD.
Yeah. So you weren't just sitting on your laurels, you were learning and experiencing the world and living overseas as well.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of stuff. So I think, I had quite a lot of experience, but it wasn't that linear. Leave school, go to university, get an MBA, go and work at a consulting, and then go into a senior management position. I was not like that. So I find it easy when people are, kind of not panicking, but going, oh, I'm not where I should be and all that sort of stuff. I find it easy to say, don't panic, don't worry about it. Everyone comes through their career differently, and that's just not important. So what's important is that you're really self-aware. You know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses or your opportunities, whatever you want to call them, are. And then my deal has always been to surround myself with people who complement me, who are stronger in areas that I'm not. Yeah. And then I make a really good team, and then I listen to them. I don't try and do their jobs for them. I listen to them, and then I make quite quick decisions. And I think because of that, it's made me, I've always been really happy to share that and share those experiences. And you can just see the visible relief on people's face when I go, I didn't get a job till I was 31, because they're surrounded by high achievers. And the worst thing you can do is get caught up with comparing yourself to other people. So it's nice to be able to break that for them and go, don't worry about it. It's meaningless.
Have you got many young people around you in your current role? I know you've had lots of young people around you throughout your career, but do you kind of like to surround yourself by lots of different generational kind of...
Yeah. Two of the guys on my senior leadership team, on my executive team, one of them's in his 20s and one's in his 30s. I mean, they're amazing.
Amazing, but so different, right? Those generations have produced different types of people with different ways of dealing with things. How do you... you must have seen, the Gen Xers, the hardworking on their Blackberries all night, responding at 3 a.m. to international emails versus, the younger generation now aren't like that so much. They're more balanced in terms of they want more balance, I guess. What do you find your observations of differences are?
What I've worked out, it's actually not the generation someone's from that's really kind of telling about them. What I find is it's their life stage. So the guy who's on my executive team is 28. He's got a 12-year-old from his wife's different marriage, but he's got a 7 and a 5-year-old. So his kids are the same age as mine. And in many ways, it feels like we're at the same life stage, you know, because we'll
he's
talk
young,
about,
right, with those kids.
He's really young, but he came out of 10 years in the Navy. So he's used to lots of responsibility. And his stakeholder management and his communication skills are incredible. Like, they're incredible. So he's probably not your typical millennial or Gen I or whatever you want to call them. And then I think what happens with the younger ones that are coming through is, I mean, as long as they've got really good mentors within the business, you know, there's no expectation in Swift that you work all weekend. There's no, I don't like that stuff. And we definitely don't have a culture where people are competing about how late they can send emails to each other. That just doesn't exist. Obviously, when we've got a big deal on or we need to work over the weekend, we do it. But we don't do it very often. It's not an expectation. So we make sure that our culture is all about balance. And I think that generation really like that. You know, they like the fact that we are about balance and that we kind of muck around a bit. And we spend most of our time on Slack.
Got a personality.
Yeah.
I think especially in the last few months, it's been more important than ever to really try and connect with your people over Slack and over Zoom in a way that's much probably more real than ever that can happen in the office. And it's ironic in a way because you're seeing the backdrop to people and you're kind of seeing them in their, you know, half top pajamas, you know. It's real.
So last
been
week,
nice?
Last week I was doing an interview. Kirsty's hiring a new head of product, and you know, we're having like the final interviews, and I'm here on Zoom, and my daughter, you know, those little fluffy bunnies that they put on the back of their freaking backpacks, of their school bags, you know, they fall off all the time. So I'm there interviewing this girl, and Kirsty says to me, "Are you sewing?" Get this bunny sewn up, and we're all pissing ourselves laughing because we were all mothers and everyone knew that the bunnies fall apart.
We can't have the bunny off the backpack, that's for sure.
You know, the world.
I think it's a relief. I think everyone is relieved at just having a little bit less of the gloss and a bit more of the real in their appearance, and certainly taking away commuting times and all that.
It's been so good for efficiency.
Totally. I think, you know, businesses, if they're, you know, surviving through COVID, they're probably booming because their people are happier and going for walks every day and got some hours back with their family. Some
people in our organisation are really missing the social contact and they feel really isolated. So I think what we'll look to do is, you know, I'm going to say to everyone, only go back if you want to go back. You know, for those people who want to go back, we'll have a smaller office and it'll be more like a pop-up office and it'll be much more casual. So when we want to all sit together and have a brainstorm, we can, or want to do a strategy day or all that sort of stuff. But there's no way we're expecting everyone, you know, 8:30 till 7.
Oh,
the office.
I know. Well, what music to the ears, you know, and I think you have actually just hit the nail on the head of what it feels like every single conversation is heading towards. It's the office of the future is a meeting place for people to be able to connect, but it's not a 9 to 5 or 8 to 6. It's when you need to, and it's putting that responsibility back on the individual of wanting to do that. And like you say, there are some people that are, you know, missing that social contact, and it's really, it is a valuable opportunity for them. That's so cool. You must have, you know, have you presented that to the team yet, or where are you up to with
we're not back in the office. Well, we're not back in the office. Perth is back in their office. They've got an office, but again, we've just kind of said only go back if you're comfortable. And you're comfortable with social distancing. If you're not comfortable, just talk to your manager and just organise to stay home. Like, it hasn't mucked up productivity.
No.
At all.
And are you having to kind of do lots of check-ins with people? How are you monitoring the productivity? What does that look like?
So we do, well, funnily enough, we do all hands, but someone the other night, we were having drinks and someone said, "You fired us all on an all hands, so can you change the name of that?" I'm like, okay, we can. Because they see an all hands come into the calendar and they all get really stressed about it.
Oh.
So now we're just calling them monthly catch-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And then I try and send a mail to everybody at least, once a week. Like last week, we had 5 new starters. So we just kind of walked through who all the new starters were, and just, and then each of the managers spends kind of a lot of time on Slack and with all of their teams.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how technology is just, it's imperative to, it was always imperative, but now it is. Zoom and Slack seem to be the go-to. And I don't know if you're a Google Docs or some kind of collaborative document system.
Yeah. We couldn't live without. We're on SharePoint. We use Blue Jeans and Slack. And I would not work on one document that is not shared.
Exactly.
It's all collaborative.
Yeah.
I mean, the board papers.
But you can get so much done, and so quickly. And so quickly. It's just... And
there's no redlining. There's no track changes. There's no version control. There's nothing. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I think businesses are really going to benefit from this period. And anyway, I want to kind of let's tie a bow on COVID, because we know what that is, and thanks for sharing some of that insight about how you're working. I do want to, because I can see the time is disappearing so quickly, talk about some of your career highlights, because you have had such a fascinating career, and just maybe one or from each of your places of
career highlights. Yeah, it's interesting. Career highlights. It's always, I thought about this one. A real career highlight for me always is mentoring. I love that. I love when we put mentoring, structured mentoring roles in places. And I'm still in contact with virtually all of my, mentees.
Yeah.
And they're all great. So that's kind of an ongoing. And then it's always very satisfying winning awards, because that's real peer recognition. So when you win Sales Team of the Year, or you win Brand of the Year or Marketing Team of the Year, and we've won plenty. I wouldn't say I've won plenty. I've been on teams that have won plenty of those, and that is really satisfying and really fun. But I guess my biggest career highlights are always when I get to build something, because at the very basis, I'm still a product person, and I love building new shit that has never been built before. So definitely building Australia's first addressable advertising system for Channel 9 in NINE Now. That was awesome. And that was just so great, because I remember saying to everyone, this is the capability. And I could see all the TV guys just rolling their eyes going, this is such a load of bullshit. And then we actually did it. And then they could see it working, and they were like,
shaking your head.
Oh my God, this is incredible. So I remember watching TV one night during the 2019 election and seeing who was the Dr. Karen Phelps?
Yes.
Seeing a Dr. Karen Phelps ad while I was watching NINE Now. And I knew they had geo and targeted straight into us. They could tell household by household by household.
Brilliant.
And they could get that targeting in primetime television. I was like, my job is done.
Yes, the power of advertising when you can layer in that targeting is just phenomenal, isn't it? And it actually brings back the TV world, because really programmatic has been diminishing the value of TV while there's no targeting capability, and now the targeting's in there. Wow, you're pumping straight into a household's TV screen. Yeah, and what people don't seem to remember about the TV screen is that, in BVOD, the ads are unskippable, they're sound on, and they're full screen. Yes.
And they're unskippable.
Yeah, right.
Nothing in digital can promise that. Nothing.
No, that's absolutely right.
That huge screen is the most powerful medium for communicating emotion, and ultimately brands and advertising, it's about emotion. It's not really about, logic.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because I think, advertising from my perspective is only as good as the content and the creative that is
100%.
produced. And
it's part art and it's part science. There's a lot of art.
That's right. And you really do see a lot of clever advertising, but even cleverer now when you can target to a particular audience, right? Have you got any examples that you can think of clever marketing that's really targeted audiences using that new BVOD targeting technology?
Well, I watch a lot of SBS On Demand.
Yeah, same.
So, they've got a pretty good idea of who their target markets are. And I'm beginning to see more and more, evidence of of that kind of targeting. And then another really cool thing that SBS do is they send you out an email based on your watching habits.
I love that email.
Yeah, it's one of the few emails I open up. Because mine's all Scandi Noir. This is the new Scandi Noir. I'm like, excellent. Now I don't have to go searching for content. They just gave it to me.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's another good example of that. And then in terms of career highlights, look, I definitely say building Swift Plus has been a career highlight. I mean, Kirsty and the team, they came up with that idea, scoped it, put it through beta, put it through alpha, put it through beta, and launched it in sub 5 months.
Wow, that's a phenomenal amount of time. That's a lot of experience that you delivered there. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Okay, well, let's keep skipping through because I noticed we've only got 15 more minutes now, and I want to kind of try and keep us on track. But what do you think in terms of that quality that you have? I mean, we talked a little bit about this directness and things, but what is your quality as a CEO? You've had a lot of great CEOs that you've worked for, Jack at Fairfax, Steve at 9MSN.
Yeah.
Tell us, have you kind of taken from them some of those learnings and their skills and behaviours and kind of applied it to your style?
Yeah. So definitely with Jack, one of the first things he said to me was, he said, what do you want to do with your career? And I didn't want to say, I want to be a CEO because, girls don't often do that. But I did say, look, I would like more of a senior management role, but I'm I'm quite weak on financial management. And he went, doesn't matter. He said, I'm weak on financial management. You surround yourself with people who complement your weaknesses. You can learn
quickly.
Yeah. But, you bring them into your team. You're not expected that you do every single thing.
Yeah.
What's expected is that you build a team that together have all the skills that you need. So that was a real game changer for me. That was like, oh, great. I don't need to go back and do,
an accounting MBA.
An accounting MBA. I can actually just hire in people. And after that point, in all of my roles, I always work closely with the CFOs because that's my area of weakness. And then I'm also, you've got to be very, very self-aware. And so another part that I'm self-aware about is I'm not really good with details. I just don't.
You're a macro person.
I'm a macro person. So again, I tend to surround myself with detail people and I teach them very quickly how to deal with me. So if Kirsty sends me an email, she never just attaches a huge spreadsheet. She summarizes the spreadsheet, she puts it in 3 bullet points, and then down the bottom, she puts what she needs me to do.
Yeah.
And so everyone who works for me does that. And it allows me to roll through tons of work really quickly.
And was that something that you
pre-digested?
You communicated to them that's the way you like to work? Send me the detail, but send me the summary and I can process it much quicker.
And tell me what you want me to do.
Yeah, right. How can I add value?
What do you need? What do you want? What do you need me to do next? And so it's blindingly obvious. And it's been interesting watching people adapt to that. Like some people can adapt to it and some people just can't. They just can't do it. Yeah, they just can't do that. They're just so in the weeds themselves and they think everyone needs to be in the weeds. Like, no.
And would you say then one of your strengths, I know we talked about this, but is a quick decision making. So ability to absorb that information and make a quick decision.
Yeah, and I can make a really quick decision, which, in my professional life is fantastic. In my personal life, it annoys the crap out of my husband.
Well, that feels like a fairly normal dynamic.
He's just like, we're not at work. I'm one of your employees. This isn't a yes/no question.
This is collaborative. We're a collaboration. I think just finishing off on our kind of, businessy work questions with you, I wanted to, and I don't want to kind of get down the whole of, women in workplaces. It's all about people in workplaces these days and diversity. But what, it isn't usual for women to be on the boards of businesses. It's not usual for women to be CEOs. Yeah. How do you help women? What do you want to say to women or people in general about chasing their dreams or fulfilling their, goals of trying to get into these high positions? What's the best way for them to do that?
I think the best way to do that is to really focus on your own thinking. I think everyone gets held back by negative chatter, and you've just got to recognize it. You don't get caught up in comparing yourselves to other people, not other women, not other men, not anyone else. Understand what you want to do. And every time you hear yourself going, oh, I can't do that, or I'm no good at that, you've got to consciously put that away and just go, that's not doing me any good. What can I do now that's a positive step forward? And just keep stepping forward and stop concentrating on, don't listen to the chatter that's going on around you.
And is that something that you kind of delivering to your daughter?
Yeah, well, oh God, my daughter, she's so boy crazy. I can't do anything.
She's too young to be boy crazy.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. I mean, I pick up my phone and there's like 50, FaceTimes with, oh my God. Yeah, I mean, I've already seen her starting to say, I want to have a skinny stomach, or I don't want to look like, or I want to do this or this. And so, you're constantly saying to them that doesn't matter. All that matters is that you're doing something you love and you're happy, and, so, that's going on. But she's too young for me to have, work conversations with, because she's, at this point in time, just, way too young. But I do have those conversations with like my young nephews and nieces. I'll have conversations where they'll, one of them will be really, really smart and say, oh, maybe I need to go and become a lawyer. I'm like, well, you love literature, you love this, you love that. Don't you think you're going to find that very boring? He's like, yeah, but it makes really good money. You're like, believe me, you're doing it for the rest of your life. Don't worry about the money. It's got to be something you love. It's got to be something you just love. And I do say that to my son all the time, like, just find something you love. Yeah. And I think, I know it sounds like such a cliche, but for girls, the other thing that I do say to them is, I often are in a situation where a girl will say, oh, my career is kind of stalled, so I'm going to move away somewhere with my boyfriend and we're going to get married and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, listen, 100% I hear that, but as a woman, optionality is what makes you happy. And having a lot of options and keeping your career options open, because relationships go wrong. Yeah. And if you've got a strong career to fall back on, you have options, and you will not make a decision based on fear, because you have optionality. That's absolutely so I really try and drill into everyone.
And that's for all people, right? Just having options and keeping focus on different parts of their life rather than putting all their eggs in one basket. Yeah. Okay, we're going to quickly transition into a little bit of personal stuff, and I guess I've just read an amazing book lately by Sally Dobson, Normal People, and then In Conversations. It's been a fantastic read. It's top of mind for me, but is there any books in your kind of world that have really changed your life? And tell us about that.
I think, I know this sounds like a strange one, but maybe about 20 years ago, I went through a phase where I read a lot of Buddhist books, and I read The Power of Now by Pema Shodren, and that definitely changed. That gave me an appreciation of being able to hear the voice and being able to step back away from it and just go,
turn it down
and concentrate on, don't live your whole life in the future, actually be able to appreciate now. So often I will be now, like doing a puzzle with my kids, listening to music. One of them will be doing some craft or something in the house, and I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. This is exactly what it should have been.
Yeah, exactly. Just
not
sitting in it.
Yeah, just be in it. So that was really important for me, and I think that also allowed me to take a lot of angst out of my career.
Yes, not having that pressure of what's happening in the future, but just trying to enjoy the moment. It's a big learning, and I think you spend your whole life learning that lesson. It's not one that you can just slam dunk after a book. So it's something.
Definitely not. And and it creeps in. I'll catch up with a whole lot of girls that I've worked with previously, and everyone's got all these kind of, big careers, and not that I don't, but you can easily get caught up.
Compare yourself.
Oh, yeah, why didn't I do this, and why didn't I have that? And then I just stop myself and just go, don't. Yeah. I'm so lucky with what I've got. Yes. And it's so special, and I've got great relationships.
And it's yours.
It's mine, and I just got to be in it and love it.
Yes, that's right. And I'm all about the fact that this journey, it's a rambling journey, but it is a personal one, and every part of it is so important and leads you to the next bit. You can't kind of avoid it. You really can't.
And I wouldn't, if someone said to me, would you go back, to some point in time where you felt you made a mistake and redo it all over again? I'd absolutely say no, because
No.
everything that I did led me to where I am now.
Yeah.
And where I am now is kind of perfect.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
For
good.
now, exactly. And who knows what the future holds.
Yeah.
And are there any habits, little habits that you have that kind of, I know you're a bit of a fitness fanatic. What habits have kind of kept you in good stead and kept that mind clear? And
well, interestingly, during COVID, obviously we couldn't go to the gym or do anything like that. And my husband, goes to the gym a lot. And so I can't remember who suggested it, me or him. I don't know who did, but we started doing yoga together every morning.
Cute.
It's awesome. And it's so good because I jokingly say to him, you need to approach your mat with intention. Like around like
he
that.
Must love that.
Oh, yeah. And at the end of it, he goes, have a nice day instead of no. He just falls around. But you know what? We put some music on, we light a candle, we do it as the sun comes up, and it's so great. It just really brings you back
a bit
down.
Of connection for the beginning of the day.
But the connection for the beginning of the day, and then I don't get the lower back pain, and he doesn't get it, and we're like, God, it was something so simple. Why didn't we ever do this before?
Years ago.
Yeah. So
it's a nice ritual to do something as the sun's coming up and you're approaching the day with something for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
beautiful. Great. And I mean, I don't think I've often heard you feel like insecure, self-conscious or things like that. Those are not emotions I kind of attribute to knowing you personally and professionally over the years. But are there times in life where, you feel a bit overwhelmed or you feel a bit unmotivated and you have a mechanism to push through, or you just don't feel those?
No, everyone feels it. Again, it comes back to listening to those voices. And usually when you're feeling overwhelmed and unmotivated, it's because the negative voice, the one that's sitting on your shoulder, is it's really loud, and you just have to shut it down. Just hear it, shut it down, and then if something really bad's happened, I will let myself kind of grieve and feel bad about it for a while. I don't deny it, just feel it, and then go, okay, that's done. Let's pack it away now. What's going to move me forward? And you just dust yourself off, and you just get back out there.
Yeah, and that's very much back to the power of now, I guess, with that operating in the present rather than just catastrophizing the future or the past. And it's a great one. Yeah. Is there any philosophy that you live by? Is there something
not really. I mean, I just really try and stay present.
Yeah,
present. And understand how, be very grateful for what you've got. And I obviously understand that I've been lucky. And that I've got a lot to be really grateful for. But I think that I look to people who from the outside may look to be in a better position than me, and they're desperately unhappy. And it's really about knowing what you want and being grateful for what you've got.
I'm going to pop in a question I didn't have on our list, and it's just what you've been married to Bruce for
11 years.
11 years now, and you've got a couple of kids, and you probably met him fairly late in life and things. Very. And but you're nailing marriage now, and your career's on a high, and you've got a lot of good things to look back on your life. Why do you think your marriage is able to succeed when you're in such a high, these high positions and kind of busy and a lot of schedule and obviously lots of responsibilities? How are you keeping that marriage in a good place?
I guess I'm in a really fortunate situation in that, I'm hopeless at all the household work and cooking and all that kind of stuff. And Bruce really loves it. So Bruce is really, really great. That's where he really excels. So we see where we complement each other. I'm the macro one, and I'm thinking about kind of our future, and I'm kind of thinking ahead and our finances and all that sort of stuff. Helps also that Bruce is a chartered accountant, so you can sit down and actually work out the details on that. But we're very, very complementary. Yeah. Interestingly, his nickname for me is Phil. And he just calls me Phil because he says I'm like a man. And you know what? We both just are very comfortable with
sense of humour.
Yeah, he's got a great sense of humour, and it's very dry. And we also really like spending time together. So we just make sure that it's not all about the kids all the time.
Yeah.
We try and spend 1 hour a day together at nighttime watching TV. And that's hard because my kids are like, I want mummy in bed with me. I want mummy to do this. I want mummy, it's all mummy, 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 mummy. But I have to say to them, I have to spend some time with daddy. And they're like, why? It's time with daddy. I'm like, I don't. I spend hardly any time with daddy.
Yeah.
So they've had to learn that too.
That's a super interesting one. It's a hard pull, isn't it? Because it's hard to say no to them, but then at the same time, you really know that if you don't, you're going to really forfeit that time with your partner, and that's a big loss.
And then I think what's also interesting about being a working mum is that, you know, your kids are forced to respect your time boundaries. Whereas when you're a non-working mum, I think that's really difficult. I don't know how they do that. So my kids know that when I step into this study, they're not allowed in. I'm working.
Yeah.
And they completely respect that. They do not walk through the door. You know, so then I try and do a little bit the same thing with Bruce. You know, this is my time with daddy, and then all the rest of the time is yours.
Exactly. Well, that's good. That's a really great way of approaching it. And I think kids are quite, you know, they're very malleable, aren't they? They kind of, they like the structure, they like the boundaries, but they love also fitting in around and wanting to kind of, you know, be part of that family routine, whatever it looks like.
Yeah.
So last question. It's been an awesome interview, and I know we're on 12 now, but just a quick one. You've got one thing to say to the people of the world right now, because it's such a crazy time. What is it? What do you want to say? Like, what is on your mind when you're watching, you know, TV at night and watching the news?
Oh yeah, obviously. I mean, you know, last night we started watching Jensen's all into military history at the moment, and we started watching World War II in colour. And they were going through, the first episode was all about the events and elements that led up to the First World War. And it's really scary to watch because we're almost going through something really similar at the moment. It's with, I think everyone knows, with kind of the situation with China and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
I think again, it comes back down to, if you get very caught up with the future or the past, you end up making bad decisions. So I think that we really need to
act
I would
now.
I would love Australia to, I know that we've been on a big rush towards globalization. I would love Australia to step back and start thinking, well, maybe we sacrifice profit for creating sustainable jobs and industries
in Australia.
So if anything goes on, we don't rely on anyone. It's all here. So I love it when I hear about pivots that people are doing to keep stuff here. And I love that. And I love all the sustainability stuff. And I just think that, you know, we're in this really amazing situation that we have so much solar energy, we have wind, we have, you know, all this different stuff. We could be the world leaders in sustainability and just keeping our world maybe not so profitable, but really a lot more sustainable.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's what comes out of the back of COVID. You know, everyone realizes, oh shit, this is what we've got to do.
That's awesome. I think that's it's absolutely 100%. We're sending so much stuff away overseas, and we've got it all here. Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much, Pippa. It's been awesome talking to you. It's been a fascinating chat. I cannot wait to re-listen to this, because I know that there's so much I just want to absorb in, and I know that this has been a big hour out of your day. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to the Digital Collective today.
No problems, Mia. See you later.
Thank you. Bye. If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe via your preferred podcast platform for more episodes of A Moment with Modern Mentors.